Take a look at this house. Until the night of November 29th, 1980, it was an ordinary family home in Kawasaki on the edge of Tokyo. A father who had come first in almost everything he ever tried, a mother from an old island family, and two sons. At about 2:30 in the morning, the younger son came down the stairs with a metal baseball bat and killed both of his parents while they were asleep. He was 20 years old, and he had failed his university entrance exams 2 years running. The whole thing took about 4 minutes. Then he washed the bat, he pulled the drawers open so it would look like a burglary. He changed into pajamas, and he sat upstairs for 6 hours waiting for it to get light so that he could run next door and tell the neighbors something had happened to his mom and dad. The 4 minutes are not what I struggled with. The 6 hours are. And by the end of this, you are going to understand the thing it took Japan 45 years to say out loud. Go looking for the villain in this family, and there is not one. The house is gone now, and the people who live on that street still will not say what it is known for. This is that story, and it is heavy. There are only 3 things you need to know about the house. His father slept in a room at the front of the ground floor. His mother slept in another room at the back, with the family living room between them. They had been married for 25 years, and they were sleeping at opposite ends of the house. Nobuya slept upstairs, and underneath them, cut into the hillside, was a garage. Remember that garage? It is the one part of this house that will still be here decades after everything else is gone. Now let me tell you who lived in it. The father was Ichiryu Mikio, and he was 46. He grew up on Suo Oshima, an island in Yamaguchi Prefecture at the far end of the country, and his family had been climbing out of it for 2 generations. His own father left the island, got into what is now Hitotsubashi University, and finished as a branch manager at Mitsubishi Bank. That grandfather had 4 sons, and pointed all 4 at the same target. 2 of them went to the University of Tokyo, 1 to Keio, 1 to what is now Tsukuba. There is no gap in that row. Mikio was one of the 2 who went to the University of Tokyo, where he read economics and was captain of the yacht club. He joined Asahi Glass, one of the biggest manufacturers in the country, and he rose. He was blunt, he was strict, and, of all things, he liked to sing. The mother was Ichiryu Chieko, 46 as well. Her family were sake brewers on the same island, 5 daughters and no son, and because the family name had to continue, Mikio married into her family and took her surname. The man in this house who demanded that his children rise had given up his own name to marry into it. The older son went to Waseda University's own high school, then Waseda itself, engineering, then a research laboratory at Hitachi. Again, nothing slipped. And then there was the younger son, Ichiryu Nobuya, born in August 1960, 20 years old that autumn, and in his 2nd year as a ronin. That word matters. Ronin originally meant a masterless samurai, a man with no lord and nowhere to belong. In modern Japan, it means a student who has failed the university entrance exams and is spending a year outside the system, at a cram school, waiting to try again. Nobuya was on his 2nd one, and he had failed everything twice. So, November 28th, 1980, a Friday, and it was the parents' wedding anniversary, 25 years to the day. Mikio was not home for most of it. He had spent the day on a golf course entertaining clients, which was the job now, and on the way back he stopped at his usual place near the station and drank. He got home late. At some point he reached for the leather case he carried his season ticket in, and his bank card was not in it. He had a good idea where it had gone. Around 11:30 at night, he called Nobuya into the reception room. The mother came in too. The older brother was not in the house that night. He was staying at a friend's place, and that detail is going to matter in about 10 minutes. The father put it straight to him. The bank card missing from my case, that was you. Then he went further. Money keeps disappearing from my wallet as well. That is you too. Nobuya admitted the card. He had taken it, he had drawn out 10,000 yen, about $45 at the time, and he had spent it on records. He handed the card back and apologized for it. But the money from the wallet he had not taken, and he said so. His father did not believe him. "I do not remember raising a thief," he said. "Give up on university altogether." And then the thing happened that I think actually broke this open. The mother, who had spent 4 years standing between these two, who had talked her husband into letting this boy have a second year, looked at her son and said, "You are hopeless. I have had enough of you." He went upstairs. He poured whiskey into a flat pocket bottle and drank it straight from the neck, sitting in his room. And his father came in. His father shouted at him for drinking, then kicked him in the side, hard enough that the boy went over sideways, still in the chair. In 20 years, that had never happened before. Not once. This man had never put a hand on him. Nobuya sat back up and pulled a sullen face, and his father stood in the doorway and said, "Do not push me. Look at your attitude. You have been useless from the start. Get out of this house tomorrow." Then he closed the door and went to bed. Nobuya drank for more than 2 hours. It was almost the end of November. The third round of exams was already hopeless. The one person in the house who had always covered for him had just told him she was finished. And now he had been told to leave, and he had no idea how somebody like him would survive outside. At some point, he looked into the corner of the room and saw the Beat. It was there because of the only part of high school he had actually enjoyed, playing sandlot baseball with his friends at weekends. That is what it was in the house for. 2:30 in the morning, November 29th. He picks the bat up, he puts on rubber gloves, he goes down the stairs. First to the room at the front, where his father is asleep. Then across the living room to the room at the back, where his mother is asleep. Both of them died where they lay. Neither of them woke up. And this is where it stops being a story about a bad night and turns into something colder. He carried the bat into the bathroom and washed it. Then he stood there in the middle of the night and worked out a plan. He went back through the house and pulled open the chests of drawers so the rooms would look ransacked. He took his mother's jewelry. He took cash. He changed out of the clothes he had done it in, put on pajamas, and hid them in his own room. He pushed the bat into the tenbukuro, the small storage cupboard set into the wall above the closet, the place in a Japanese house where you put the things you only need once a year. Then he waited, and not for 20 minutes. He waited from roughly 3 in the morning until 9. 6 hours upstairs in his pajamas, in a house with his parents lying on the floor below him, going over what he was going to say. What sticks for me is not the bat, it is the gloves. He was drunk, he was 20, and he still stopped to put on gloves. A little after 9, he ran out of the front door and next door, still in his pajamas, and told the neighbor something had happened to his mom and dad. The neighbor's wife walked back with him. She found the father in the room at the front, in his futon. Then she went past the living room to the back and found the mother in hers. She did not stay. She went home and called the police. The officers who arrived had been told it was a robbery. They went in, looked at the 2 rooms, then looked up at the ceiling, and nothing about it read as a burglary. The drawers had been gone through, so on paper it could be robbery. But the violence was not the violence of somebody who wants a chest of drawers. So they opened 2 lines at once, robbery and grudge. One more thing before the arrest, and it tells you more about people than the crime does. At lunchtime that day, while the police were still working in the house, the family and the relatives who had come sent out for tonkatsu, breaded pork cutlet, from a small shop nearby. The woman who ran that shop was still telling the story nearly 30 years later. She remembered the delivery, and she remembered the coroner coming in for his own lunch and dropping his blood-stained white gloves onto her counter without a word. Nobuya ate that tonkatsu. It was the last meal he ever ate in that house. His story was simple, and for most of one day it held. He told the police he had left a note for his mother asking her to wake him at 7 because he had a class at the cram school. Nobody woke him. He opened his eyes at 9, went downstairs to complain about it, and found them. It is a good lie. It explains why he was asleep, it explains why he was late, and it quietly makes his mother the one who failed to do something. But the robbery underneath it was falling apart while he was telling it. Very little had been taken. There was no sign anybody had forced their way in, and no burglar needs to do what had been done to those 2 rooms. The detectives checked the family too, because they always do. The older brother had been at a friend's house all night, and his alibi held immediately. That left one person in the house. That evening, Nobuya went to stay with an aunt in Tokyo, his mother's older sister. The police rang to say officers were on their way over to talk to him again. A second aunt took that call, his mother's younger sister. She sat with it for a while and then decided to ask him herself. She said, "Listen, it was not you, was it?" And he said very quietly, "You already know, don't you?" Then he said the saddest sentence in the entire case. He said he had been planning to hand himself in after the funeral, once everything was finished. He was 20 years old and he had built himself a schedule. Get through the wake, get through the cremation, get through the family, then go to the police. His aunt did not give him that. She called them and he was arrested the next day. He never denied anything after that. He told them all of it, in order, including the gloves. So now the real question, the one this whole thing turns on. Why? The answer Japan reached for immediately was the exam war. Juken senso is the Japanese phrase for it, and in 1980 it was not a metaphor. There was one road. Get into a name university, get into a name company, and your life is decided at about 19. Nobuya had been on that road since he was small. He was a cheerful kid, pale, a bit round, the one who made the other children laugh. He was put into a public junior high school in Minato Ward, which sounds ordinary until you know that this school fed into the best public high school in Tokyo, and families moved across ward boundaries to get in. He aimed at his brother's school, Waseda's high school. His parents brought in 3 private tutors, one each for English, maths, and Japanese, and all 3 of them taught at the school he was trying to get into. He failed. He got into Kaijo instead, which is a very good school that happens to be one rung below the one he wanted. In his junior high graduation book at 15, he wrote a line that has stuck to me since. He wrote, "What on earth have I been doing for these 3 years?" That is a 15-year-old auditing his own life and coming up empty. After that, he stopped. First term of high school, he scored below the pass mark in 2 subjects and finished second from bottom of his class. His parents came down on him, and a week later he took a few tens of thousands of yen out of his mother's purse, about $100 then, and ran away from home. Even the running away is sad because of how carefully he planned it and how little he did with it. He had secretly copied the key to a flat his grandfather rented in Tokyo. He went to Osaka for one day, looked at an advert for a bartender, did not go in, and came back. His grandfather came up from the island and found him. The whole rebellion lasted a week. His mother told her sisters afterwards that the light had gone out of him. She used the slang of the period for it. The 3 no's, no drive, no feeling, no interest. Then the failures start stacking. First attempt at university, 1979, he sat 5. Waseda twice, then Sophia, Chuo, Meiji Gakuin, Seijo. All 5 said no. Second attempt, 1980, another 5. Waseda again. Rikyo, Meiji, Hosei, Nihon. All 5 said no. That is 10 rejections in 2 years for a boy whose father, brother, grandfather, and 3 uncles had never been rejected by anything. And in his second Ronin year, he simply stopped going. He was enrolled on a course built specifically around getting into Waseda, and he attended, on average, 7 days a month. He left the house every morning. He went to the cinema. He went to pachinko parlors. He drank whiskey in his room in the afternoons, then came down for dinner, and nobody asked. He thought about the self-defense forces. He thought about training as a chef. He could not make himself walk through either door. And this is where the case stops being the tidy story the newspapers ran. Because the father was not screaming at him to get into the University of Tokyo. Read what the man actually said after the second round of failures. What are you even studying for? Enough. Finishing a university is not the whole of life. Give it up and get a job. That would be much better for you. That is not a parent pushing. That is a parent trying to let his son off. But it landed as a verdict because of who was saying it. A man who had gone to the University of Tokyo and never failed anything, telling you that university does not matter. Nobuya heard, "You are finished." He panicked and begged for one more year, and his mother and brother argued his case, and he got it. There is one more piece almost nobody mentions, and it is the piece that reframes the entire house for me. The father was failing too. That year, the trade division he had worked in for most of his career, where he had climbed to deputy general manager, was closed down. He was moved sideways into building materials at the Tokyo branch. On paper, it was a promotion. In practice, he was off the track to the board, and a man who had spent his life planning was now driving out to clients and drinking with them at night to hold on to accounts. That is why he was coming home late. That is why he was stopping at the place by the station. And that is why the detail from the beginning matters. He and his wife were sleeping at opposite ends of the ground floor. His son had watched all of it and taken his mother's side, and had built up a quiet resentment about it, which is exactly why, when the man wrongly accused him of taking cash out of a wallet, he did not swallow it the way he had swallowed every other telling off in his life. Nobody in that house was the villain of this. That is the thing. It was two people failing the same exam at opposite ends of a hallway. Before I get to the last part, do me one quick favor and tap the like button. I am still building this channel, and it helps more than you would think. The trial took years because the court sent him for a psychiatric examination that ran for more than 12 months. And then there is the lawyer, which is the one part of this case that surfaces when I am doing something else entirely. The man who stood up and defended Nobuya was called Kawahara Seiji. He had been his father's classmate at the University of Tokyo and his father's closest friend. The family hired him privately. So the person arguing for the life of the son was the man who had known the father since they were both 19 and had nothing to lose yet. On April 25, 1984, the Yokohama District Court, Kawasaki branch, gave its verdict. The prosecution had asked for 18 years. The court gave 13 with 900 days already served counted against it. The reasoning is unusually human for a Japanese court. The judges said plainly that the parents were not at fault and that being told off is not a reason, but they accepted from the examination that he had a developmental disability. They found the alcohol had substantially reduced his judgment without meeting the legal bar, and they treated it as something that erupted rather than something planned. He did not appeal. He thought it was merciful. There is something I am leaving out on purpose. Within months of the arrest, a famous television journalist published a theory about the mother and the son and a sexual relationship. It was built on guesswork. The writer admitted that all the way through it, and two other journalists who covered the case called it fabrication in print. I am not walking you through it. It was a rumor a boy who could not answer back had to live inside, and repeating it here would only keep it breathing. He served the sentence at Chiba prison, all of it, and walked out in 1994. There is one story from inside, from a memoir by a man who was in there with him. So take it as prison talk rather than record. There was a baseball tournament in the yard. Nobuya took a turn at bat, and he swung so hard and for so long that inmates who ran actual criminal organizations asked a guard whether somebody should take it off him. Now let me tell you what this did to the country. The press took that street apart. They were stopping commuters on their way to the station. Neighbors started moving away. 2 years later, one of the biggest rock bands Japan would ever produce put a song about a boy exactly like him on their first album. In 1983, a photographer printed a picture of the house itself in a book about where Tokyo was heading, and that photograph of an ordinary suburban home ended up on the cover of a record. Then a television drama, a stage play, a full-length work of reportage, and programs still being made about it in 2008. And this is the part that answers the title. In 1980, the Japanese language did not have the phrase kyoiku gyakutai, education abuse, the term now used for pushing a child into damage through study. There was no name for it because there was no conversation about it. This case is a large part of why the conversation started. The name arrived later, and it arrived on top of this house. In 2000, in Okayama, a 16-year-old killed his mother with a metal bat, and every newspaper in the country reached for the same 3 words to describe it. 20 years, and the shorthand had not moved. So, back to the house. It was demolished. Somebody built a bright new place on the plot, a new family lives there, and it looks like nothing at all. Except for one thing, remember the garage? Because the land is on a slope, that garage was cut into the hillside, and it forms the footing the house stands on. You cannot take it out without taking out the ground. So when a journalist walked up there in 2008 with the old crime scene photographs in his hand, the house was completely different, and the garage was identical. The one piece nobody could remove is the piece holding everything else up. He tried to interview the street. Every single person smiled and said they had just moved in at the time and remembered nothing. One elderly woman gave him that line, and as she walked away, he called after her that it must have been chaos around here. Without thinking, she turned around and said, "Oh, they were interrogating people on their way to work." Then she saw what she had done, put the smile back on, and left. One last thing. After he got out, Nobuya is said to have gone to India, to a remote state in the northeast, and spent his life teaching for a Buddhist aid organization. Weekly magazines printed it. I went looking for something firmer, and there is nothing firmer, and nobody has ever confirmed it. I can tell you that a boy who was destroyed by not passing an entrance exam may have spent the rest of his life in a classroom on the other side of the world, and that the people who knew the family have chosen to believe it. The part I have not managed to file away is this. Everyone in that house was trying to do right by somebody they loved, in the only language they had, and that language contained exactly one word. There was no way to say, "You are enough," because nobody in that family had ever needed to. For 2 generations, everybody had passed. So what happens to a family when the only sentence it knows how to say stops being true? Tell me below and tell me honestly, because I read them all.